The Productive Life of Frances Perkins. Frances Perkins was born in 1880 in Boston, Massachusetts. Her mother was Susan Perkins and her father was Frederick Perkins. She had one sister. Her name was Ethel, and she was 4 years younger than Frances. Frances belonged to a family that was conservative, Republican, and members of a congregational church. Perkins was not exposed to poverty until she entered school. When she talked to her family about concerns with poverty, she was told the people are products of laziness and addictions, and that she should not worry about them. Quote from Frances Perkins: "I had to do something about unnecessary hazards to life, unnecessary poverty. It was sort of up to me." At age 25, Perkins changed her name from Fanny to Frances. She also changed churches. At age 33, she married Paul Wilson. She chose to not adopt his last name, which was considered radical. Paul suffered from bipolar and depression symptoms, which began to show 5 years later. He was in and out of psych wards and eventually died in 1952. At age 36, Perkins gave birth to her daughter, named Susanna. She also struggled with mental health. Her bipolar disorder symptoms began to show. Perkins lived and had an intimate relationship with Mary Harriman Rumsey, who later died tragically in 1934. Perkins' education. At age 22, she graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in physics and minored in biology and chemistry. She was a teacher for a few years. She then decided to study economics and sociology at the University of Pennsylvania. At age 29, Perkins relocated to New York City and studied at Columbia University. Her fieldwork reflected child malnutrition. She lived in settlement houses and was involved in the women's suffrage movement. A year later, when she was 30, she graduated with a master's degree in political science. Frances Perkins had a very productive career. At age 27, Perkins was the General Secretary of Philadelphia Research and Protective Association. The purpose of the association was to advocate for immigrant females that were victims of sex trafficking. This job only paid her $50 a month, which was not enough to make ends meet, so she decided to further her education so she would have more opportunity. Next, New York City Consumers League. At age 30, she was the executive secretary. The purpose of the Consumers League was to achieve better working conditions and hours. She fought for factories, which she thought needed to be protected from fires. Bakeries need sanitary protections, and also to limit working hours in factories. At the New York City Consumers League, she partnered with Florence Kelley. On March 25th, 1911, there was a devastating fire at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. Frances Perkins witnessed this fire firsthand in Manhattan. Doors to the facility were locked to avoid theft, so the workers were unable to escape. At this time, they lacked safety regulations to protect their workers. 146 deaths resulted from this fire. 123 of the individuals who lost their lives were women and girls, and the other 23 were men. 47 of these people jumped out of windows, which were on the 8th, 9th, and 10th floor of the building. The other 99 died from smoke inhalation or being burned alive. Perkins was on the Committee on Safety of the City of New York from 1912 to 1915. The Factory Investigating Commission's purpose was to create fire safety laws and to explore ways to protect the well-being of its employees. Frances Perkins was an expert witness as well as an investigator. This is quoted from Frances Perkins. From the time I was in college, I was horrified at the work that many women and children had to do in factories. There were absolutely no effective laws that regulated the number of hours they were permitted to work. There were no provisions which guarded their health, nor adequately looked after their compensation in case of injury. Those things seemed very wrong. I was young and was inspired with the idea of reforming, or at least doing what I could to help change those abuses. Frances Perkins was the first executive secretary on the Maternity Center Association. This association is now known as Childbirth Connection. 9. Perkins was the New York State Industrial Commission. She was appointed by Al Smith, which was the governor of New York. He supported Perkins since she advocated for employed females of all ages. During her time, she supervised Industrial Code, the Bureau of Information and Statistics, and the Bureau of Medication and Arbitration. At age 49, Perkins was promoted to the New York State Industrial Commissioner by Franklin Roosevelt, who was the New York governor at the time. She supervised 1,800 staff members. At age 41, Perkins was on the Council of Immigration Education. At age 41, she was the Executive Secretary for the Council on Immigration Education. Perkins served for the New York State Industrial Board. At age 42, she was appointed Commissioner, and at age 46, Chairman. In 1933, Perkins was appointed U.S. Secretary of Labor by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. She was the first woman to hold this position. Her policy priorities include limit working hours to 40 hours per week, minimum wage, and child labor laws, unemployment compensation and Social Security, federal aid to states for unemployment relief and employment service, as well as universal health insurance. During President Franklin D. Roosevelt's first 100 days, Frances assisted with the first New Deal. She created job opportunities with the Civilian Conservation Corps, or CCC, which created work for unemployed unmarried men, as well as the She camps, which created work for unemployed women. During the Second New Deal, Perkins assisted in drafting the Social Security Act of 1935 as well as the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938. With the Social Security Act, it accomplished pensions for elders over age 65, unemployment and workers' compensation, aid to needy and disabled individuals. The Fair Labor Standards Acts established minimum wage, banned child labor, and established maximum working hours, 40 hours plus time and a half when working overtime. Perkins served as the U.S. Civil Service Commissioner from age 65 to 72. She was appointed by President Harry Truman. This ended Perkins' time in the White House. From age 75 to 85, she was a visiting professor at Cornell University's School of Industrial and Labor Relations. At age 85, Frances Perkins died in New York City. Frances Perkins had a productive life.